The miscalculation. The proving grounds. The Dravkan Empire had ruled the outer spiral arm for 3,000 cycles, and their dominance was not a matter of debate. War Marshal Theron stood aboard the bridge of the Imperator, the largest dreadnought ever constructed by his people, watching as his fleet assembled in the darkness of space. 200 warships, each capable of reducing a planet to molten slag, hung in perfect formation like predatory birds waiting to strike. Theron's four eyes scanned the tactical displays with satisfaction. The scales on his broad shoulders gleamed under the bridge lights as he moved between stations, checking readiness reports. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived, and that philosophy had carried them to the stars. Every species they encountered learned the same lesson: submit or be destroyed. Today would be no different. Intelligence reports indicated that a new species had entered their territory, one calling themselves humans. The scouts had detected several vessels moving through the Kasari Nebula, a region the Dravkan had claimed after crushing the previous inhabitants. These humans would learn, as all others had, that the Dravkan Empire did not share. The communication officer, a younger Dravkan with nervous movements, approached Theron with a data tablet. The vessels have been located, War Marshal. They are holding position near the third planet of the Valoria system. Theron's mandibles clicked in approval. How many ships? The officer hesitated. Our sensors detect 7 vessels, Marshal. They are considerably smaller than our destroyers. 7 ships. Theron almost laughed. These humans were either incredibly brave or remarkably foolish. He had brought 200 of the finest warships in the galaxy to deal with 7 small vessels. It would be a brief encounter, and then the Dravkan could continue their expansion without interruption. Set course for Valoria. All ships, battle formation Omega. Theron commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Let us introduce ourselves to humanity. The human encounter Admiral Victoria Cross sat in the command chair of the UESS Defiance, sipping coffee from a magnetic cup as she reviewed the morning reports. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, the soft hum of advanced systems providing a comfortable background noise. The Defiance was humanity's newest Explorer-class vessel, designed for long-range missions into uncharted territory. Admiral, we have multiple contacts emerging from faster-than-light travel. Lieutenant Commander James Park announced from the sensor station, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. Counting 200 vessels all armed, they are adopting an attack formation. Victoria set down her coffee and leaned forward, her gray eyes sharpening with interest. 200? Someone wants to make an impression. What about the other 6 ships in our group? All captains report ready status. They are awaiting your orders. Victoria smiled slightly. The 7 human ships in this region were not warships in the traditional sense. They were exploration vessels, scientific platforms, and colony surveyors. Each one was lightly armed by Earth standards, carrying only defensive weapons. But Victoria knew something the approaching fleet did not. Human defensive technology had reached levels that would surprise most galactic civilizations. Open a channel to the fleet, Victoria ordered. Let us see what our new neighbors want. A moment later, the main view screen flickered to life, showing a massive reptilian creature with 4 eyes and scales that seemed to shift between green and black. The being's presence radiated aggression and confidence. I am War Marshal Theron of the Dravkan Empire. You have entered sovereign Dravkan territory without authorization. Power down your vessels immediately and prepare to be escorted to a processing facility. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction. The voice was deep and threatening, translated by the ship's artificial intelligence with remarkable accuracy. Victoria stood, straightening her uniform. She was a woman in her 50s with short-cropped silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen too much to be easily intimidated. She clasped her hands behind her back and smiled politely. War Marshal Theron, I am Admiral Victoria Cross of the United Earth Expeditionary Service. We appreciate the welcome, though I must say it is a bit more theatrical than necessary. We were not aware this region was claimed, and we certainly mean no offense. However, I am afraid we cannot comply with your demands. The silence that followed was almost comical. Theron's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, as if he could not quite process what he had heard. His mandibles opened and closed several times before he found his voice. You refuse? The words came out slowly, each one heavy with disbelief. Victoria's smile widened. Not refuse, Marshal. We simply decline. There is a difference. You see? We are on a peaceful scientific mission. We have no intention of causing trouble. But we also have no intention of being bullied. Perhaps we can discuss this situation like civilized beings. On the Imperator's bridge, several officers made sounds of shock. One dropped a data tablet. Theron's scales darkened to nearly black, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. You dare mock the Galactic Empire? You with your 7 tiny ships against our armada? Theron's voice rose to a roar. Perhaps you do not understand your situation? Allow me to educate you. The display of force Theron gestured sharply, and his weapons officer immediately complied. On the view screen visible to both fleets, a nearby asteroid approximately 5 kilometers in diameter hung in space. It was unremarkable, composed of iron and nickel, the kind of rock that drifted through every solar system. Observe, human. What happens to those who defy the Galactic Empire? The Imperator's main cannon, a weapon that drew power from the ship's primary reactor. Charged with a deep thrumming sound that resonated through the hull, a beam of concentrated energy, bright enough to hurt the eyes even through filtered screens, lanced across space and struck the asteroid dead center. The result was spectacular. The asteroid did not simply explode. It vaporized, transformed from solid matter to superheated plasma in less than a second. The shockwave from the destruction rippled outward, scattering smaller debris in all directions. Theron turned back to the view screen, expecting to see fear on the human admiral's face. Instead, Victoria was nodding thoughtfully as if she had just witnessed an interesting science demonstration. Impressive energy output, Victoria commented, tapping her chin. I would estimate approximately 40 petajoules in a single discharge. Your power generation systems must be quite advanced. Tell me, what is your recharge time for a shot like that? Theron's mandibles hung open. The human was analyzing his weapon like a professor reviewing a student's project. Where was the fear? The desperation? The immediate surrender? Lieutenant Commander Park leaned toward Victoria and whispered loud enough for the open channel to catch. Admiral, I calculate their recharge time at approximately 4 minutes based on the energy signature decay. Victoria nodded. 4 minutes. That is respectable, but it does leave you vulnerable during the recharge cycle. Have you considered a distributed capacitor array to reduce that time? The Galactic bridge had gone completely silent. Theron's officers stared at their instruments, then at their war marshal, then back at their instruments as if reality had suddenly stopped making sense. You are not afraid? Theron finally managed. Victoria's expression turned serious, though her eyes still held a hint of amusement. Marshal Theron, we left our home world and traveled thousands of light years to explore the unknown. If we were the type to be easily frightened, we would have stayed home. Now, shall we discuss this situation rationally? Or would you like to fire a few more shots at space rocks? The human counter Theron's frustration boiled over. His crew had never seen their war marshal so agitated. Very well, human. If demonstrations are what you require, then demonstrations you shall have. Target the human vessels. Fire a warning shot across their formation. 5 Galactic destroyers moved forward, their weapons arrays glowing with built-up energy. They fired simultaneously, sending bolts of plasma streaking toward the 7 human ships. The shots were carefully aimed to pass within meters of the human vessels, close enough to show deadly intent but not to actually strike. On the Defiance, Victoria did not even flinch. Shields engaged, Admiral, Park reported calmly. Energy absorption at 12% capacity. The plasma bolt struck an invisible barrier surrounding the human ships and simply stopped. The energy dissipated across the shield surface, creating brief ripples of light before fading to nothing. It looked as if the devastating weapons had hit water and been absorbed without a trace. Theron leaned forward in his command chair, his claws gripping the armrests hard enough to leave gouges. What is this? Victoria's voice came back pleasant and educational. Oh, that is our standard defensive shielding. It is based on adaptive energy dispersion. Your plasma weapons are quite powerful, but the energy is distributed across our shield matrix and converted to other forms. Essentially, you just recharged our batteries a bit. Thank you for that, by the way. Impossible. One of Theron's officers breathed. No species has developed shields that efficient. Victoria heard the comment through the open channel. Well, no species you have met so far. Humanity tends to approach problems differently than most. We are rather good at taking energy meant to harm us and finding ways to use it instead. It is a survival trait we developed over millennia. Theron stood, his full 3-meter height imposing even through a viewscreen. You possess advanced defensive technology. This is noted. But defense means nothing without offense. Your ships carry minimal weapons. You cannot fight and you cannot run. Submit now, and the Empire may show mercy. Victoria exchanged glances with her first officer, Commander Sarah Chen, a younger woman with sharp features and sharper intellect. Both women wore expressions that suggested they were sharing a private joke. Marshal Theron, Victoria said, her tone becoming almost gentle. We have been trying to be polite, but I see that you measure worth only in terms of violence. Very well. Let me show you something. She nodded to Park. Lieutenant Commander, please activate the resonance pulse. Park's fingers moved across his controls. Resonance pulse active. Targeting Dravkin fleet. From each of the 7 human ships, an invisible wave expanded outward, traveling at the speed of light. It passed through the Dravkin formation without any visible effect. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, across 200 Dravkin warships, every single weapon system simultaneously powered down. Targeting computers went dark. Energy conduits shut off. Missile launch tubes sealed themselves. In less than 5 seconds, the most powerful military fleet in the outer spiral arm had been rendered completely unable to fire a single shot. The confusion. The Imperator's bridge erupted in chaos. Officers shouted at their stations, frantically trying to understand what had happened. Engineers reported in from across the ship, all delivering the same message. Weapon systems were offline and not responding to commands. What have you done? Theron roared, though for the first time his voice carried a note of uncertainty beneath the anger. Victoria remained calm, almost apologetic. We have temporarily disabled your weapon systems using a harmonic resonance pulse. It is completely reversible and causes no permanent damage. Think of it as a technological timeout. Your ships are perfectly fine otherwise. Life support, propulsion, shields all functioning normally. We just removed your ability to hurt anyone for a little while. This is an act of war, Theron declared, though the statement rang hollow coming from someone whose fleet had just been neutered. Actually, Marshal, I would argue that your attempt to destroy us was the act of war, Victoria replied, her voice hardening slightly. We have simply defended ourselves in a non-lethal manner. We could have done much worse, but we prefer not to harm others if we can avoid it. She paused, letting that sink in. Now your weapons will remain offline for approximately 30 minutes. During that time, I suggest we use the opportunity to have a civilized conversation. We can discuss territorial boundaries, cultural exchange, and perhaps establish a framework for peaceful coexistence. Or, when your weapons come back online, you can try to attack us again and we can repeat this exercise. The choice is entirely yours. Theron slumped back into his command chair, his mind racing. In 3,000 cycles of expansion, the Dravkin Empire had never encountered a situation like this. They had faced species with powerful weapons, advanced shields, even clever tactics, but they had never met anyone who could disable an entire fleet with such ease, and then offer to talk about it over tea. One of his senior officers approached quietly. War Marshal, our scientists are analyzing the pulse. They say the technology involved is at least 500 cycles ahead of anything in our database. Theron's 4 eyes focused on the viewscreen, where Admiral Victoria Cross waited patiently, her expression open and friendly, despite having just demonstrated the ability to destroy his entire fleet. For the first time in his long military career, War Marshal Theron of the Dravkin Empire felt something he had never expected to feel when facing an enemy. He felt respect, and beneath that, the cold touch of fear. These humans had not won through overwhelming force or superior numbers. They had won by being so far ahead technologically that the fight had never really existed. And they had done it while smiling and offering to negotiate. What kind of species does that? He wondered, as if reading his thoughts. Victoria spoke again. Marshal Theron, I know this is difficult. Your empire has been the dominant power in this region for a long time. But the galaxy is vast and there is room for all of us. Humanity does not seek to replace you or conquer your territory. We simply want to explore, learn, and hopefully make friends along the way. She leaned forward slightly. We can be the best allies you have ever had, or we can continue to demonstrate why it is unwise to threaten us. But I would much prefer the former. What do you say? Theron looked around his bridge at the confused and shaken faces of his crew. He thought about the 7 small human ships that had just disabled 200 of his finest warships without breaking a sweat. He considered the implications of encountering a species that could do such things and still preferred talking to fighting. Finally, he made a decision that would change the course of Dravkan history. "Open a secure channel to the human admiral," he commanded. "It seems we have much to discuss." As the connection was established, Victoria smiled. "Excellent choice, Marshal. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And despite everything, despite the shock and the humiliation and the complete upending of everything he thought he knew about galactic power dynamics, War Marshal Theron found himself almost believing her. The revelation, the investigation. 3 hours had passed since the Dravkan fleet's weapons had been restored to full functionality. War Marshal Theron sat in his private command chamber aboard the Imperator, surrounded by his most trusted advisors and senior intelligence officers. The room was dimly lit, designed to help Dravkan eyes focus during critical strategic planning sessions. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing data streams and analysis reports that grew more disturbing with each passing moment. Chief Intelligence Officer Kavros, a lean Dravkan with unusually bright silver scales, gestured to one of the displays. "War Marshal, we have completed our initial assessment of the human vessels. The results are concerning. Concerning is an understatement," Theron growled, his tail lashing behind him in agitation. "They disabled our entire fleet with 7 ships. 7. What have you learned?" Kavros manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up detailed scans of the human vessels. "The ships themselves are relatively small, as we observed. However, their power generation capabilities are extraordinary. Each vessel produces approximately 8 times more energy than our largest dreadnought, despite being a fraction of the size." Another officer, the fleet science advisor named Helrix, stepped forward. Her scales were marked with the blue patterns that indicated advanced academic achievement in Dravkan society. "More troubling, War Marshal, is what we cannot detect. Our sensors show significant gaps in our readings of their hull composition, their propulsion systems, and their internal workings. It is as if they are using technology specifically designed to be invisible to our detection methods." Theron's mandibles clicked thoughtfully, "Or they are simply so advanced that our sensors cannot interpret what they are seeing." "That is our assessment as well," Helrix confirmed. "We estimate that human technology is between 500 and 1,000 cycles ahead of our own, possibly more in specific fields." The room fell silent as the weight of that statement settled over everyone present. 1,000 cycles. The Dravkan Empire had achieved its current level of advancement over 3,000 cycles of development. The idea that another species could be a full third more advanced was nearly incomprehensible. "How is this possible?" Theron asked quietly. "Our expansion scouts have surveyed thousands of systems. We have encountered hundreds of species. None have shown this level of advancement." "Where did these humans come from?" Kavros brought up a star map. "According to their own statements, they originate from a system they call Sol, located approximately 12,000 light-years from here in the Orion Spur. That region has been considered too far and too undeveloped for any advanced civilization to exist." Theron studied the map. 12,000 light-years. That is beyond even our fastest scout ship's practical range. He paused. "How long would it take our vessels to travel that distance?" "Approximately 40 cycles using our current faster-than-light drives," Helrix answered. However, the humans claim to have made the journey in less than 2 of their years. The implications were staggering. If the humans could travel that distance in such a short time, their propulsion technology was not just advanced, it was revolutionary. Theron stood and paced the chamber, his claws clicking on the metal floor. What about their weapons? Surely they must have some offensive capability beyond defensive shields and disabling pulses. Kavros hesitated before answering. "That is where our intelligence becomes even more troubling, War Marshal. We have detected no conventional weapons on their vessels. No plasma cannons, no missile tubes, no kinetic accelerators. Either they have weapons so advanced we cannot recognize them, or they genuinely rely entirely on defensive and non-lethal systems. A species that advanced would have devastating weapons," one of the junior officers interjected. "They must be hiding their true military capability." Theron was not so sure. He had watched Admiral Cross carefully during their confrontation. Her confidence had not been the bluster of someone bluffing. It had been the calm certainty of someone who knew they held all the advantages and chose not to use them. That was somehow more frightening than facing overwhelming firepower. A communication alert chimed softly. Theron's personal aide entered the chamber and bowed. War Marshal, Admiral Cross has sent a message. She invites you and your senior staff to come aboard the human vessel Defiance for what she calls a diplomatic reception and cultural exchange. Theron's eyes narrowed. She wants us to board their ship? Yes, War Marshal. She emphasizes that the invitation is entirely voluntary and that you may bring whatever security personnel you deem necessary. She also mentions that refreshments will be provided and that she hopes to demonstrate the benefits of peaceful cooperation. It could be a trap, Kavros said immediately. We should decline. But Theron was thinking strategically. If the humans wanted to harm them, they could have done so already. This invitation might be an opportunity to learn more about their capabilities, to see their technology up close. It was a risk, but potentially a valuable one. We will accept, Theron decided. Prepare a shuttle. I will take Kavros, Helrix, and a security detail of 20 warriors. If the humans want to show us who they are, then we shall look closely. The surprise. The shuttle bay of the UESS Defiance was unlike anything Theron had ever seen. Instead of the harsh metal corridors and utilitarian design of Dravkan ships, the human vessel featured smooth walls with embedded lighting, holographic displays that seemed to float in midair, and a level of aesthetic design that suggested these beings valued beauty as much as function. Admiral Cross stood waiting with several of her officers. All wearing crisp uniforms in dark blue with gold trim, she stepped forward with a warm smile, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting that Theron's briefing had explained. War Marshal Theron, welcome aboard the Defiance. I am pleased you accepted our invitation, the Admiral said, her voice genuinely friendly. Theron carefully extended one of his clawed hands, mindful of the significant size difference, and briefly clasped the human's much smaller hand. Admiral Cross, I confess curiosity about your intentions. Victoria gestured for the group to follow her, simply to show you that we are not enemies, Marshal. Come, let me give you a tour. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Theron's security detail scanned everything with their detection devices while trying to appear casual. The readings they were getting made no sense. The ship's power conduits seemed to be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The hull itself appeared to be some kind of adaptive material that changed properties based on external conditions. They entered a large room that Victoria identified as the ship's primary science laboratory. Inside, human technicians worked alongside sophisticated equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. But what caught Theron's attention was a device in the center of the room, a cylindrical chamber approximately 3 meters tall. This is one of our quantum fabricators, Victoria explained, approaching the device. It allows us to create complex materials and components at the molecular level. The technology is relatively new for us, only about 20 years old, but it has revolutionized our manufacturing capabilities. Helrix moved closer, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic caution. This creates matter from energy patterns? Not quite. A human technician answered, a young man with dark hair and eager eyes. We provide base materials, and the fabricator rearranges atoms into whatever configuration we program. We can create anything from hull plating to medical supplies to food. Food? Kavros interjected. You manufacture your meals? The technician grinned. Some of them. Fresh food is better. But when you are exploring deep space, having the ability to create nutritionally complete meals from basic elements is quite useful. Victoria moved to a control panel. Let me demonstrate. She entered a series of commands and the fabricator hummed to life. 30 seconds later, a panel opened, revealing what appeared to be a complex mechanical component. This is a replacement part for our sensor array. It would normally take weeks to manufacture using conventional methods. We just made it in half a minute. Theron picked up the component, feeling its weight and examining its precision. His engineers would need days to create something of this quality, and it would require multiple specialists and expensive facilities. The humans had just produced it as casually as one might replicate a meal. Impressive, he admitted. Though I notice you are showing us this technology freely, are you not concerned we will copy it? Victoria's smile was knowing. Marshal, even with complete schematics and a working example, It would take your scientists decades to understand the underlying principles, and longer still to replicate it. We are not concerned about sharing some of our capabilities, because we know they are far beyond your current ability to duplicate. The statement was not boastful or cruel. It was simply factual, delivered with the same tone one might use to explain mathematics to a child. Somehow that made it even more impactful. However, Victoria continued, we are willing to help you advance. If the Dravkan Empire is interested in cooperation rather than conflict, we can share certain technologies that will benefit both our peoples. Why? Theron asked bluntly. What do you gain from helping us? Victoria led them out of the laboratory and toward what she indicated was the ship's observation deck. Once there, they found themselves standing before a massive transparent wall that looked out into space. The view was breathtaking. Stars stretched to infinity, and the gathered fleets of both species hung in the darkness like jewels. We gain allies, Victoria said softly. We gain friends. We gain new perspectives and new ideas. Humanity learned long ago that we are stronger together than apart. We have spent our entire history fighting each other, conquering each other, trying to prove superiority. It brought us nothing but suffering. She turned to face Theron directly. Then we finally learned to cooperate, to share, to build each other up instead of tearing each other down. It transformed our species. We went from a fractured world constantly on the brink of self-destruction to a unified civilization that reached the stars in less than 2 centuries. That is a pleasant sentiment, Kavros said skeptically. But sentiment does not govern the galaxy. Power does, Victoria nodded. You are correct. Power does govern, which is why we are offering to share ours. We do not seek to conquer the Dravkan Empire. We seek to empower it. The challenge back aboard the Imperator, Theron convened an emergency council with his senior leadership. The meeting chamber was filled with the Empire's most powerful military and political figures, all demanding answers and proposing courses of action. We should attack immediately, War General Corvin declared, slamming his fist on the tactical display. Use overwhelming numbers. They cannot disable all our ships at once if we coordinate a simultaneous strike from multiple vectors. Theron regarded Corvin coolly. And if they can? If their 7 ships can do what our sensors suggest they can do, your plan would result in the destruction of our fleet without harming a single human vessel. Then we bring more ships, Corvin insisted. We mobilize the entire Imperial Armada. Surely they cannot stand against thousands of vessels. Fleet Admiral Nexia, a veteran of countless campaigns, shook her head. General Corvin, you are thinking like we are facing a conventional enemy. The humans have already demonstrated capabilities we cannot match. Throwing more ships at them is like throwing more stones at a mountain and expecting it to crumble. So we do nothing? Corvin challenged. We allow these newcomers to dictate terms to the Dravkan Empire? Theron raised a hand for silence. We have been given a choice. Continue to view the humans as enemies and likely face defeat, or accept them as potential allies and benefit from their assistance. Neither option is what we expected when we entered this sector, but these are the circumstances we face. He activated a holographic display showing technical data from the human fabricator. The humans have offered to provide us with replicator technology. Not their quantum fabricators, which they acknowledge are too advanced for us to utilize, but an earlier version that would still revolutionize our manufacturing capability. In exchange, they ask only for navigational data about this region of space and the opportunity to establish diplomatic relations. The council members murmured among themselves. It was an astonishingly generous offer, which made many of them suspicious. There must be a hidden cost, Kavros said. Species do not give away such valuable technology without expecting something in return. Unless, Helric suggested quietly, they truly mean what they say. Perhaps their advancement is not only technological but philosophical. Perhaps they have learned something about cooperation that we have not. The chamber fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. It was a radical thought for a species that had built its empire on conquest and domination. I propose a test, Theron said finally. We accept their offer of technology transfer. We establish the diplomatic relations they request. But we also watch them carefully. We study everything they do, everything they say. If this is deception, we will discover it. And if it is genuine, he paused, looking around at the faces of the Empire's leadership. If it is genuine, then we may have encountered something more valuable than a dozen conquered worlds. We may have found a civilization that can show us a better way forward. The demonstration 3 days later, a carefully selected team of Dravkin engineers and scientists gathered in a neutral space station that both species had agreed to use as a meeting point. The humans had transported one of their replicator units, a device that was supposedly several generations behind their current technology, but still far beyond anything the Dravkin possessed. Admiral Cross was present along with several human technicians. Theron had come as well, unable to resist witnessing this moment firsthand. The tension in the room was palpable as the human team prepared their demonstration. The replicator we are sharing with you operates on principles of programmed molecular assembly. A human engineer named Dr. Sarah Martinez explained, "It cannot create complex materials like our quantum fabricators, but it can produce standardized components, repair parts, and basic supplies with high efficiency." She activated the device, which was larger and more obviously mechanical than the sleek quantum fabricator Theron had seen aboard the Defiance. The replicator hummed and clicked, sounds that suggested moving parts and active processes rather than the nearly silent operation of the more advanced device. "We will start with something simple," Dr. Martinez continued. "A standard power coupling used in your ship's energy distribution systems." She input commands and the replicator began to work. The Dravkin engineers crowded closer, their instruments scanning every aspect of the process. After 2 minutes, the machine completed its task and produced a component that looked identical to the standard Dravkin power couplings they used throughout their fleet. Helrix picked up the component and examined it closely, running it through a portable analyzer. "Molecular structure is perfect," she announced, surprise evident in her voice. "This is identical to components we manufacture in our orbital facilities, but produced in a fraction of the time and with no waste materials." The implications were staggering. The Dravkin Empire's manufacturing capabilities relied on vast industrial complexes, massive workforce populations, and significant resource extraction operations. This single device could replace entire factories. "This is the technology you are giving us?" Kavros asked, suspicion still evident in his tone. "Your outdated, obsolete technology?" Dr. Martinez smiled. "What is outdated for us is revolutionary for you. That is not an insult, simply a statement of fact. This replicator technology was cutting edge for humanity about 50 years ago. We have moved far beyond it, so we lose nothing by sharing it. But for your civilization, it will be transformative." She gestured to several large containers nearby. "We have brought 50 replicator units as an initial gift. We will also provide complete technical documentation, training for your engineers, and ongoing support as you integrate this technology into your infrastructure. All we ask in return is the navigational data we discussed and your willingness to establish peaceful relations." Theron stepped forward, his posture formal. "Admiral Cross, I must ask directly, why are you doing this? Our species nearly came to war. We threatened you, fired upon you, and showed nothing but hostility. Yet you respond with generosity. I do not understand your reasoning." Victoria met his gaze steadily. "Marshal Theron, my species has a saying. The best way to make a friend is to be a friend. You threatened us because you did not know us and because your experience taught you that strength must be answered with strength. That is understandable. But we believe that true strength lies not in domination but in cooperation." She gestured to the replicator. "This device will improve the lives of billions of Dravkin citizens. It will make your ships more efficient, your resource management more effective, and your economy more robust. When your people see these benefits, they will associate humanity with positive change. That is worth far more to us than territorial control or military dominance." Theron was silent for a long moment, processing this philosophy that was so alien to everything his culture valued. Finally, he straightened to his full height and made a formal gesture of respect. "Admiral Cross, on behalf of the Dravkin Empire, I accept your gift and your offer of friendship. I cannot promise that my people will immediately embrace this new relationship, but I give you my word that we will honor it and work toward the cooperation you envision." Victoria smiled and extended her hand again. "That is all we ask, Marshal. Change takes time and trust must be earned. We are patient." As Theron clasped her hand, he felt something shift within himself. For 3,000 cycles, the Dravkan Empire had expanded through force, viewing every encounter as a potential conquest. But perhaps these humans had discovered a better way. Perhaps strength did not always need to be demonstrated through violence. The shift news of the agreement between humanity and the Dravkan Empire spread rapidly through the galactic community. Species that had long feared Dravkan expansion watched with fascination as the mighty empire entered into an equal partnership with the mysterious newcomers from beyond known space. In the weeks following the initial agreement, human technical advisors worked alongside Dravkan engineers to implement the replicator technology. The impact was immediate and dramatic. Industrial production increased by 300%. Resource scarcity, which had driven much of the empire's aggressive expansion, became far less critical. The quality of life for average Dravkan citizens improved measurably. Theron found himself in an unusual position. As the war marshal who had made first contact with humanity, he became the Empire's primary liaison with the human diplomatic mission. He spent hours in discussions with Admiral Cross and her staff, learning about human history, philosophy, and the long, difficult path they had taken to reach their current level of advancement. Your species nearly destroyed itself multiple times, Theron observed during one of these conversations, reviewing historical records the humans had shared. Wars, environmental collapse, resource depletion. You faced every challenge that typically ends a civilization. Victoria nodded soberly. We did, and we survived by learning from our mistakes. Each catastrophe taught us something valuable. We learned that cooperation achieves more than competition. We learned that diversity of thought makes us stronger. We learned that investing in all our people, not just the powerful, creates a more stable and prosperous society. She pulled up an image showing Earth as it appeared in the humans' early industrial era, choked with pollution and scarred by conflict. This was our world 500 years ago. We were on the brink of making ourselves extinct. But we changed. We chose a different path. And within 2 centuries we had healed our planet, unified our species, and reached the stars. Theron studied the images, seeing parallels to challenges the Dravkan Empire currently faced. Conquered populations that resented their subjugation, resource management issues that drove continued expansion, internal political factions competing for power. The humans had faced all of this and found solutions. Could we achieve such transformation? He asked quietly. Victoria's answer was immediate and confident. Absolutely. The Dravkan people are intelligent, capable, and adaptable. You have built an empire that spans hundreds of star systems. That required incredible organization, technology, and determination. Now imagine what you could accomplish if you directed that same energy toward building rather than conquering. The negotiation. The formal diplomatic negotiations took place over several months. Theron represented the Dravkan Empire, while Admiral Cross spoke for humanity. They were joined by representatives from several other species that had observed the initial encounter and wanted to understand these powerful newcomers. The negotiations revealed just how different human priorities were from galactic norms. While most species focused on territorial claims, resource rights, and military positioning, the humans pushed for agreements on cultural exchange, educational cooperation, and scientific collaboration. We propose joint research initiatives, Admiral Cross explained during one session. Your scientists work alongside ours. We share knowledge freely, with the understanding that discoveries benefit both our species. A representative from the Kelvorian Confederacy, a species known for their shrewd diplomacy, raised an objection. Such an arrangement would allow the Dravkan to rapidly close the technological gap with humanity. Why would you give away your advantages? Because knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied, not divided. A human diplomat named Ambassador Chen responded. When the Dravkan make discoveries based on what we teach them, they will share those discoveries back. Everyone benefits. That is how progress works. The concept was so foreign to typical galactic politics that many representatives struggled to believe the humans were serious. Species had been hoarding knowledge and technology for millennia, viewing it as a source of competitive advantage. The idea of freely sharing seemed naive at best, dangerously foolish at worst. But Theron was beginning to understand. The humans were not naive. They were supremely confident. They shared technology because they advanced so rapidly that what they gave away today would be obsolete for them tomorrow, while remaining valuable for recipients for decades. It was a brilliant strategy disguised as altruism. Over time, the framework of an agreement emerged. The Dravkan Empire would cease aggressive expansion in sectors where other species maintained established territories. In exchange, humanity would provide technological assistance, educational programs, and access to advanced defensive systems. Other species, seeing the benefits the Dravkan received, began requesting similar arrangements with humanity. Admiral Cross found herself negotiating with a dozen different civilizations simultaneously, each wanting access to human knowledge and technology. She handled each negotiation with patience and skill, offering assistance tailored to each species' specific needs and development level. The aftermath. 6 months after the initial encounter, War Marshal Theron stood once again on the bridge of the Imperator. But this time, instead of preparing for conquest, he was overseeing a joint patrol with human vessels through a region plagued by pirates. The mission represented a dramatic shift in how the Dravkan Empire operated. "Marshal, we are detecting distress signals from a merchant convoy," the communication officer reported. "They are under attack by raiders in the Novak system." Theron did not hesitate. "Set course to assist. Contact our human allies and request support." Minutes later, both Dravkan and human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the besieged convoy. The pirates, seeing the combined fleet, immediately attempted to flee, but the human ships deployed the same resonance pulse they had once used on the Dravkan fleet, disabling the pirate vessels without destroying them. Admiral Cross's voice came through on the communication channel. "All pirate vessels are disabled and ready for boarding, Marshal. Shall we coordinate our security teams?" "Agreed, Admiral," Theron responded. "Let us show these criminals what happens when they prey on innocent traders." The joint operation went smoothly, with Dravkan and human security personnel working seamlessly together. The rescued merchants were astonished to see former enemies now operating as allies. News of the rescue spread quickly, adding to the growing perception that the galaxy had entered a new era. Later, as Theron reviewed the mission reports, he received a personal message from Admiral Cross. "I wanted to thank you, Marshal, for taking a chance on us, for being willing to change. I know it was not easy." Theron composed his response carefully. "Admiral, when we first met, I saw your people as obstacles to be removed. Now I see you as partners who are helping us become better than we were. The change was not easy, but it has been worthwhile. The Dravkan Empire is stronger now than when we ruled through fear alone." He paused, then added, "And I must confess, there is something satisfying about seeing the looks on other species' faces when they realize that humanity disabled our entire fleet and then offered us friendship instead of conquest. It has become a source of pride rather than shame." Victoria's reply came through with a warmth that had become familiar. "That is the galaxy we want to build, Marshal. One where strength is measured not by how many you can defeat, but by how many you can help. Welcome to the new age." As Theron ended the communication, he looked out at the stars and considered how much had changed in such a short time. The Dravkan Empire had encountered a species that laughed at their threats, disabled their weapons with casual ease, and then extended a hand in friendship. That encounter had forced his people to question everything they thought they knew about power and success. And in questioning, they had found something unexpected. They had found a better path forward. The galaxy was vast enough for everyone. Resources could be created rather than fought over. Knowledge shared was knowledge multiplied. Cooperation achieved what conquest never could. War Marshal Theron, commander of the greatest military force the Dravkan Empire had ever assembled, smiled. His title remained unchanged, but its meaning had transformed. He was no longer a war marshal who led conquests. He was now a protector who defended the innocent and helped build a better future, and it had all started because a few humans in 7 small ships had met the galaxy's strongest empire and simply chuckled at the threat, confident in their ability to turn enemies into friends. The galaxy would never be the same.